tonight is in that new book. These are my notes. It's actually most of the fun in the book itself. I'm not going to go over them right now because, if not mistaken, we did this in our previous Gilgal, so I'll just take questions at this point in time. No? Okay. Tonight's topic is there's a lot of material we didn't cover. There's a lot of ideas. It's a very big topic. Reincarnation, Gilgulim, it's a vast topic, even though the Sefer itself is not so large, but it's what's between the lines that takes a lot of effort and time and work to figure out. And I would say that people ask me why it's so important to learn such a topic. Most people feel it's not so important. I didn't feel it was so important the first time that I picked up the Sefer. It was only after learning the Sefer that I realized, one of the reasons, really every seat should be filled tonight here, and it should go on past. And not because of me, but because of the material. Because this material is life-altering. It's history-altering, as we'll see towards the end, as Rosh Hashanah. One of the most important insights about history and Eretz Yisrael and the Jewish people and Geula comes from the Sefer. Now, there's certain Sfarim, and we learn a lot in the course of our lifetimes, and we see a lot of material. I've seen a lot of the Gemara. I've seen a lot of Halachas and the Shulchan Aruch. And it helps you. It builds you. It allows you to become more of who you're supposed to be. But once in a while, you come across a Sefer, if you're fortunate, and maybe even more than once in a while, that literally the world stops. You see the Sefer, it's a paradigm changer. It's just not, you're looking at the world this way, and all of a sudden it tells you, no, the world's a little bit more over this way, or that way. And it expands your horizons, and it's like, there were some times I would sit down, and I try not to cry too often in life if I can help it, but sometimes the ideas were so beautiful, so sublime, so incredibly awesome, that I would just find my tears welling up in my eyes, and I just found myself starting to cry because of the beauty of what I was seeing. It's kind of hard to impart that in a discussion. You have to see it for yourself for the most part. But perhaps, aside from the fact it's all about personal tikkun, personal rectification, things we have to know. The information is on the Sefer. If everyone learned the Sefer, there's a few swearing like that, but if everyone learned the Sefer, Sharha Gilgulim, I have no doubt that Gula would be here already by now. We'd be finished. History would be over. Because we'd have information about life and history that we have to put it all into perspective and to know what to do. And we're waiting. We're sort of like, waiting and stumbling through the dark, stumbling through history, just waiting for things to happen, waiting for Kodesh Baruch Hu to do something, to make it all, and making the best of our lives and enjoying ourselves where we can, and waiting. And for what? Another Sefer that's like this is a Sefer called Kol HaTorah. Kol HaTorah is a Sefer that purportedly is written, or was taught by the Vilna Gaon to his students back in the 1700s. It wasn't published in his time because it wasn't meant to be published. It was mostly manuscripts and notes that were his instructions to his students about bringing Mashiach ben Yosef ben Mashiach ben David, bring the Gula, what you have to do. Here's how you go and take Eretz Yisrael back from the nations of the world, and you resettle it. It's time. It's time. The Zohar says at a certain time, and we reached that time, and here we are living it, and we can do it. And here's the information. And it's complex, and there are ideas, and I don't even remember how I came across that Sefer. I think I saw it referred to somewhere, and I just happened to come across an example of it, and you're reading going, I never saw this before, I never heard this before, no one ever spoke about this before, and page after page after page after page, and controversial, for sure controversial. Why controversial? Why? Well, if you ask those who think it's controversial, why it's controversial, they'll tell you because there's no way that Vilna Gaon wrote these things. He could not have said these things. Because they're very Zionistic in nature. Can't be, right? But now it's been verified, but still can't be. We can show that it is, but no, but that's not what's controversial. That's not what's controversial. If you read in Sharha Gilgulim, he'll tell you why that Sefer is controversial, even though Sharha Gilgulim comes along before Kol HaTorah came along in history. But the reason, that the principle for why that Sefer is controversial is right there. Very simple. Anything that's going to help you bring Mashiach and bring history to an end is going to get the attention of the Sitra Achra, the Satan, the Satan, whatever you want to call him, the other guy, the other side, and he's going to get involved. Because the moment that Mashiach comes and history comes to an end, his life is over, his history's over, he's finished. And he doesn't have tender. He doesn't get to stay around, and collect pension. He's finished, he's over. His job is over. So he tries to stop that. He doesn't mind if you talk about Mashiach ben David. You can talk about Mashiach ben David all you want. He doesn't like when you talk about Mashiach ben Yosef. Why? Because that's the key to Mashiach ben David. It's like someone says, here, to honor you, I'm giving you the key to the executive kitchen. Oh, wow, I feel so special. And you go to get in there, and there's another door before it. You didn't get that key. It's not going to help you. You got the key to you can't get in this door to get to the kitchen. And so it didn't help in the end. Mashiach ben David is like, that's the executive kitchen, so to speak. Mashiach ben Yosef, that's the door to get through, to get to him. So you can talk about Mashiach ben David all you want. It's not going to stop him. It's not going to interfere with him. You can dream all you want. But Mashiach ben Yosef, that's a different story. That's a process, a procedure that we can do to hasten the Geula. We can do that. Right? He brings down the Sefer what to do, step by step by step by step by step. And if you follow it, you can actually, you can make it happen. Achishana, make it happen earlier. So the Sitra Achra, he's all over that Sefer. Doesn't want that Sefer out there. So he makes it controversial. And we, fall for it because we didn't learn Shar HaGagulim, where he tells you the rules of history and how it works. And how to recognize simanim and what to do about them to make it easier to bring Mashiach and end history. It drives you nuts. It's like very frustrating. It's like, right, what I'm saying? But people don't think it's necessary. They don't think it's important. They don't think they're going to gain from it that much. So therefore they don't read it. They don't learn it. And then later on, I was guilty of the exact same thing. I know what it's like. I really can't point the finger. I had the exact same attitude until I happened to take the Sefer one day in the bus and look at, whoa, I wish I looked at this 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It changed everything. Another thing, right, is people. We have a difficult time judging people. There's a halacha, there's a mitzvah of dan lechaschus, right? The mitzvah to dan lechaschus, to judge a person to the side of merit. And we know so many times in life we didn't do that, and it blows up on our face because, it turns out that the person was innocent, as guilty as he looked, and it works both ways. But that's very common. The Gemara brings down a few examples of a case of dan lechaschus where all the evidence is so incriminating against the person, and in the end they were innocent. That's why there's halachas of lashon hara and that. But it's difficult. It's so difficult. You know why? Because we all look at each other as if we are each other, right? So you're me, and you're me, and you're me. So I wouldn't do that. So how could you do that? Right? My test is not your, so I'm not, that's not my problem. I get the minyan on time every morning. You don't, right? Why not? It's easy for me. Why is it not easy for you? Right? And I can learn, you can't learn. And then you learn Shar HaGagulim, and you see that every car has a different engine. Completely different engine. One is older, one is newer, one is bigger, one is smaller, one has this koyach, one has this koyach, one has this. It's all different. It's all, if you look at the outside, you can wear the exact same clothing, we all look the same. And then you find out what souls are all about, and the challenges, the differences, the difficulties. And it gives you a little bit of a glimpse how Hashem looks at us. Baruch Hashem. I keep wondering why I'm still here half the time. Because if I was God, I would have taken me out of this world a long time ago. Fortunately, he knows the picture better than I know the picture. I think. I hope so. Because it's like, it's a whole different ballgame. You can understand people better once you understand what's going on with the soul. These are just some of the benefits of knowing this information and going further with this information. And even though it seems like the most Kabbalistic topic, I have to admit in the beginning I was very wary of actually getting up and talking about this particular topic in public. It took me a long, I wrote about it, I didn't mind writing about it, I didn't mind putting it in my parsha sheet, didn't mind discussing it in private, but to actually talk, publicly about the information, it was like, it's Kabbalah, but it's information that everybody has to know, especially at this late stage of history. So, for this last session, even though we can't really go into a whole lot of detail, right, because of time limitations, we're just going to look at some of the more famous Gilgulim as examples, what I call famous reincarnations. Start from the beginning of history. Hevel was somebody who lived a very short life. He didn't live very long, right? He was maybe all of 50 days in the end before his brother murdered him outside the Garden of Eden. That story is in the Chumash. It's famous, Cain and Abel. We all know the story of Cain and Abel. And he lived and he died. The Midrashim explain why he died, because a person can't die for no reason. There must have been a reason why Cain was able to execute him the way that he did, something that he did wrong. So it explains to them when the fire came down to burn up his sacrifice, he looked. You're not supposed to look at that because of divine presence. So at that point in time, he was guilty of death. So that's how it was all carried out, measure for measure. That's part of the story, too. But what's interesting, right, is what happened to Hevel. In fact, there's a few cases like this where people in history, on a pshat level, on the simple level, looked like they're not so important. They came and they went, but, it's like, we don't pay much, not in the Navihu, as I mentioned, I think, last week. An example of people who, in the Chumash, they make a mistake and they come and they go and they're finished, they're over, right? But in Shar HaGilgulim, they're a major threat to world history, to Jewish history. They're the source of prophecy. They're Shmuel and Eliyahu, that's their soul. They're very powerful souls. Moshe saw that, which is why he called them greater than you and I, referring to himself and Aaron in the end. But what happened to Hevel after that? So Hevel comes back as a Gilgul in Shes. 130 years of death, I think, right? 130 years later, Adam, the Gemara says, the Talmud says, for 130 years, Adam and Chava were doing tshuva. They were fasting, they were all kinds of, things, whatever, to do tshuva for the chet of the Yitzadas Tavara. Why 130 years, specifically? Because they knew Kabbalah. And everything in the world is made up of sparks, holy sparks, but the holy sparks are made up of Hashem's name. Everything is Hashem's name. It's all Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's the basis of all of creation. And when a person does a sin, a chet, they affect one of those Yud Kei Vav Keis. They damage 5 of them. 5 times 26, the Gemach of Yud Kei Vav Kei, is 130. So they atone for 130 years. After 130 years, they're finally rectified, as much as they're going to become rectified at this point, and they have another child. And they give birth to Shes. And Shes is the Gilgul of Hevel. And he lives out his life and produces a lineage of righteous people. Yeah.
How do they know that?
That's the tradition. And Moshe knew it was passed down. I mean, they knew these are things that Abraham knew. God, mostly prophecy. You need prophecy for things like that. Either at some point in time, someone had to say something, to somebody that had inside information, like a prophet, because it's not the kind of thing you remind me of Hevel. Are you Hevel, by the way? It's not going to come like that on the open. It had to be some prophecy. So it's Kabbalistic tradition. This isn't Shar HaGilgul. This is the Arizal, going back to the Zohar, going back to Eliyahu, going back to, it's part of the Kabbalistic tradition. It's a given in Kabbalah. So he comes back, yeah.
How'd you get 130?
Of what?
130.
26 times 5. He damaged.
Where's the 5 from?
The damage that was done, every sphere, I was trying to sidestep this point, but every sphere has what's called 5 chasadim and 5 gevuras. The Malchus is the bottom sphere that we're supposed to be building. The light that came down from the sphere of Yisod is made up of 5 and 5. Because of the chet, they blocked 5 from coming down, which would have been the completion of Maaseh Bereshis and brought, Yemos Mashiach. He blocked that. So he blocked 5 Yud Kei Vav Kei, which one corresponds to each sphere. So 5 times 26 is 130, so that's what the whole fast was about for 130 years. In general. So, okay. There's a footnote, yes. Shes, he lives a righteous life. But everybody dies in the flood, except for Noach. Right? Noach is a descendant of Shes, and he survives and goes into the next world, and from Noach will come eventually Abraham and his lineage, basically. But, he dies at some point in time, and he's finished, right? What happens to him? So he comes back as a reincarnation in none other than Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe. Hevel goes into Shes, and from Shes, Hevel goes into Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And Moshe is the Gilgul of Hevel. So therefore, the name Moshe, Mem Shin He, stands for Moshe, Shes, Hevel.
If you said Seth he was a tzaddik, then why did he have to come back as Moshe?
If he was what, sorry?
If he was
A tzaddik?
I thought you said he had a good life.
He did. Being a tzaddik, as Shlomo Melech said, there's no tzaddik that lives in the land that doesn't do a ched at some point in time. He had tikkun still to do.
So what did he need to fix?
Moshe did that, whatever it was. It could be that just his soul also was important for the Gula process. Whatever the reason is, I don't remember seeing anything specifically that he did wrong. It doesn't mention anything wrong that had to be fixed up that I can remember. But the point is, as I don't know if you last week mentioned, it's also possible to come back as a Gilgul, not just for personal tikkun too. You can come back also to madrik somebody, to guide somebody. Righteous people come back in people's bodies who are already living to help them become better than they already are. There are other reasons for Gilgulim, but more than likely he had his own tikkun to fix up as well. In fact, inside Moshe as well was a piece of Noach, not just Shes as well. And that's what it says in Yiboneh. The word Chen, as Rizal points out, is the reverse of the word Noach, alluding to the fact that he also had, and Hashem says, I know you by Shem, because he also had part of Shem in him as well. All these words in the Chumash, on the simple pshat level, alluding to pieces of Moshe's neshama, his soul. It's quite complex. The reason why this is so fascinating, among the basic reasons why it's so fascinating, is because you have, for example, an episode where you have Moshe confronting Korach, really Korach confronting Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshas Korach. And on the surface of it, it's just a power struggle. Korach wants to be the one who, is going to be Kohen Gadol, or he wants to be Kohen Gadol in the end, and he challenges Moshe's authority. And he says that Moshe's making things up, and Moshe challenges him. And then Moshe does this interesting thing where he says, listen, if you die a normal death, right, then you're right. But if you die an unusual death, and Moshe invokes that the earth should swallow him up, then this is proof positive that I have not been doing anything on my own, and it's all from Hashem in the end. And of course, the ground opens up and swallows Korach, and he's finished. What's really interesting is the fact it brings down in Shar HaGilgulim that who was Korach the reincarnation of? Who was he a Gilgul of? Turns out that he was the Gilgul of Cain. His soul came from Cain. So you have this confrontation taking place later on in history in the year 2487, right, from creation, and it actually goes back to the beginning of history, and it's part two of Hevel versus Cain. And the Shem Shmuel points out, you take the name Moshe, it's made up of Korach and Hevel combined together, gematria-wise. So what's Moshe saying? Moshe is saying to Korach, he's saying, you're coming here as the champion of the people, but let me tell you something. What's going on here really is this is just Cain and Hevel all over again. So what happened to Hevel's blood? What does Hashem say about Hevel's blood? From where? From the earth. The earth has swallowed the blood of Hevel. So Moshe says to Korach, I'm going to prove to you that this is the old confrontation taking place today. If you die the death that I did as Hevel back at that time, right, then you will see it's Cain fighting, jealous once again, not Korach challenging Moshe on behalf of the people. Well, actually refers to because it said they're turned over on a spit over and over again. So it's the ongoing punishment.
But it's like something else is going to happen.
From the Gemara, it sounds like just ongoing punishment. I don't know where you go today here, but in the Gemara, it mentioned it because almost it's like a verification. Just to show you how things work. He says. Every time he comes around, Korach, comes to the surface, it's like a piece of meat on a steak that goes around roasting, the fires of Gehenna. He comes up. So it says that he says, Moshe v'torah emes banu b'dayim. Moshe and his Torah are true, and we are deceivers. That's what Korach says every time he comes to the surface again. So Rav once pointed out that if you look at what he's saying, if someone says to you, you're great, and by the way, I'm a liar. It's like retracting what he's saying. I mean, that's not the simple pshat. But this Moshe Cain connection, Hevel Cain connection, carries on also in another interesting way. Why? Because, first of all, in Mitzrayim, you have Moshe Benu, he's going to check on the welfare of his brothers, and he sees this Egyptian beating some Jews, Das and Davira, right? So he goes ahead and he kills the Egyptian using the Shem HaMephorish. He doesn't hit him physically. He uses the Shem of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one of the names of God, and carved on his staff, right? And he uses the name, and the Egyptian drops dead. And then, of course, he buries him after that. That's what the Torah tells you. That's all the Torah tells you. A shot of the story. What really goes on in the end is that basically a piece of Cain's soul, because Cain's soul had good parts and bad parts to it, and it even required rectification, and it came through different people. So one part came through Korach later on, one part comes through Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva's a piece of Cain's. In fact, the Rizal explains that one of the ways to determine where your soul comes from is that people who come from Cain, their soul comes from Cain, and a lot of great people have come from Cain. If you're Dvor-oriented, if your nature is more like din-oriented, you're more stricter and meduyak, but more importantly, he says, if you're a craftsperson, if you work with your hands. Because the descendants of Cain were people that work with their hands and build stuff and this stuff, right? If you find yourself to be more of an action person, there's a good chance your soul hails from Cain. If you find yourself to be more of an orator, right? Someone who likes to speak, to give a Divrei Torah, and to talk, that's more your thing than being physically involved in the world, then more than likely come from Hevel. Hevel is breath, right? Hevel is a breath. That's what it means. There's ways to actually distinguish this to some degree. How absolute, I don't know, but that's what he says in Shar HaGiguli about this distinction. So Moshe kills the Mitzrim using the Shem HaMephorish.
Where do you learn name Shem? Where do you get it?
It was a Masor. He got it probably from Amram, more than likely. Yeah, no, but his mother was teaching him every single day. She was nursing him. That's what.
His mother taught him the name?
I don't know.
She left him when he was how long?
No. She was brought. Basia told Miriam to go get your mother, bring her, and to take care of him from this point on, because he wouldn't nurse. And she took care of him all through the years.
It was 18 months. You knew the Shem HaMephorish when he was 2 years old?
No. What? Sorry?
He said the Shem HaMephorish in order to kill the Mitzri.
At 12 years old.
Where?
At 12 years old.
12 years old?
Well,
How old was he?
it's a machlokes between whether he was 12 or 40. Some say 12, some say 40.
He left Mitzrayim when he was 20.
No. Some say it was later. Depends on the. But he was there at least till 12 years of age.
60 years between.
It's a good question, but it's not. That's what it says. It's not me. It's the Medrash. The Medrash says that. That's what the Medrash says. Okay, and he brings it. The Rizal saying the same thing as well. He's bringing it down. But however he learned it, he knew it. He learned it, and he had it, and he used it to kill the Mitzri with it. And the Mitzri apparently had a piece of Cain's soul, but the bad part, and that's why he was the Mitzri. So again, you have Hevel killing a piece of Cain, mida connected mida for what took place back at the beginning of history. Now, this is really fascinating. What happens from this point onward is that because he kills the Mitzri using the Shem HaMephorish, the name of God, it rectifies that piece of soul. It fixes it. It fixes it. And it leaves the Egyptian, and guess where it goes? No, Halavai. He would have wanted that. Guess where it goes? To somebody else who already possesses a piece of Korah's soul, and is of Cain's soul, and is somewhat unique in his lifestyle, but not as unique as it's going to be once he gets this piece of Cain's soul that Moshe's rectified through the Shem HaMephorish. Yisro. It goes to Yisro. And on the day that Yisro gets it, he converts. Rashi points out at the beginning of Parshas Yisro, he's Kon Midjan. The Mephorshim explained he tried this thing, he tried that religion, and that philosophy. He tried the whole thing and dumped it all. Everybody was good enough. Everybody else. Everybody else was fine with all this Avodah Zarah, but not Yisro. He changes for some bizarre reason. Why? Because he gets this rectified piece of soul, that was in the Mitzri that Moshe fixed up, who's Hevel, and now he's giving it to Yisro, who's Kain. It's like this, the whole Hevel Kain story is going all through history in all these important places. Yeah.
So a soul can go into a person who's already alive?
Yeah, we spoke about this last week, the idea of Ibor, of the idea of a soul coming, during a person's lifetime, right? That's the idea of Ibor. So this is Ibor. This would be called Ibor then. So it comes to him. So what happens? So Moshe now goes, he runs away, right? He runs from Mitzrayim because he's being chased out, right? Because he killed the Mitzri. And he ends up meeting Tzipporah by the well, right? And everything goes very well. And he brings him home in the end. And Yisro says, well, actually, they don't bring him. Yeah, Yisro says, why didn't you bring him home? They bring him home eventually. And he gives his daughter to Moshe Rabbeinu in marriage. Now,
He killed his father-in-law.
Who killed his father-in-law?
Moshe Rabbeinu killed he pre-killed his father-in-law, the person that he killed. It was the Mitzri.
Yeah, no, but the soul, but it wasn't his father. His father-in-law's in the body. So his father-in-law is Yisro. In a sense, to some degree. He was already living, but he gave him the koyach to become his father-in-law through this. Now, why did Cain kill Hevel? Why did Cain kill Hevel? You know the reason why? He was jealous. The Torah says he was jealous, but the Torah doesn't tell you what he's really jealous of. It sounds like he's jealous because God pays attention to Hevel's sacrifice, but not to Cain's sacrifice. But the Medrash says no. The Medrash says the real jealousy was that each of them was born with a twin sister, but Hevel was born two. And the sisters became their wives. In the beginning, people married their sisters. I mean, in the beginning, it was just basically them. but they married, there was no one else. Right? No shatchanim, nothing. Right? It was just basically your sister. And Hevel had two twin sisters, and they both become his wives. And Cain had one twin sister, and he was jealous of the second twin sister, so he killed Hevel over the twin sister. That's what it says. That's what Medrash says.
Each married their own twin sister, not the other's twin sister.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. In fact, the Gemara says that the verse Olam Chesed Yiboneh, right? A world of Chesed you have created, you will build. Kosh Baruch Hu will build. The Gemara says Cain said those words because he was allowed to marry his sister. It was a Chesed. He was allowed to marry his sister in the end. Okay. Now, history back then was not so much what history is today. Torah forbids things like that, but that was the beginning of history. Why Hashem did it like that? Who knows? Why did he make two different families? Whatever. But that's the way it was. He married his sister back at the beginning. So guess who Tzipporah is? Yeah, but they were from different mothers, right? So guess who Tzipporah is the Gilgul of?
His sister, Yocheved.
The twin sister of Hevel. So what's happening here? It's all getting fixed up. Now Yisro, right, Cain, in the form of Yisro's the Gilgul of Cain, is now giving back to Hevel, the twin sister he killed him for, through a wife, and doing Hachnasas Orachim, and taking care of him, and closing the chapter on Cain and Hevel, at least to that degree. Korach will be the final chapter, the final stage. Once Korach goes down, that's it. Cain and Hevel basically is over in terms of their machlokas. From that point onward, Cain and Hevel are surfacing all through history, but in us, through our lives, in the end. So the whole history comes down to this type of an idea. It's like you don't think in these terms, but it certainly explains a lot. It's remarkable how it's interweaving and things are being fixed up. Another great example of this idea is Eliezer. Eliezer, Eved Avraham, right? Remember him? Trusty Eliezer, the servant, the master of Avraham's house, who, we're told, when Abraham wanted to marry Yitzchak off to somebody special and important, he wanted to offer his daughter. And he was a righteous person, and you could assume his daughter was righteous too. And Abraham wasn't saying, well, she's not really matim in terms of her midas. He didn't say that, as far as we know, because Eliezer wouldn't have suggested if that was the case. He says it's not possible. It's not shaykh. It's not relevant. You know why? Because when your ancestor found Noah in the tent, not dressed properly and didn't deal with it properly, the whole thing, and whatever he did, right, he got cursed. Noah cursed him in the end. He didn't just yell at him you curse someone today. It's not really a curse in the family. Just it's a curse. You're not being nice, not being friend. You're expressing your disappointment and your anger. But in those days when you blessed and you cursed, it was real. It was chal. It fell in the family. It could go on for generation upon generation. And Abraham says, you're from Canaan. So therefore, you're from those who are cursed, and Yitzchak is from those who are blessed. You can't have cursed and blessed people married together back at that time. So Yitzchak, Eliezer, he had to live with that, and he went and he had to go find a wife for Yitzchak, and he does the whole thing, the whole spiel with the well and the water, And it's interesting in the Torah you have this thing of different tamim mikra, right? Different tamim on the words, right? The cantillation. When you read it, the Sefer Torah and Shabbos or during the week, you're supposed to read it according to the trop, but they also actually give over pshat as well. So one of the notes for the Sefer Torah is called the shalshala, like a chain, because it's the one that goes ah. Not everyone does it so thoroughly, but that's what it's supposed to sound like more or less. There's only 4 of them in the entire Sefer Torah, right? One of them, the first one is by Eliezer by the well over here. The second one is by Yosef Fideshes Potiphar, right? The third one is the third one is by Lot, when he's escaping, and the angel has to take his hand as if it's right? And the fourth one is when they're shechting the animal as part of the inauguration of the Kohanim in Sefer V'Yikra. It's in Parshas Shmini, Parshas Tzav. Okay, and those are the 4. Now, what do they represent? What do they mean? The other notes, they also explain things, but you can't necessarily pick out from the notes what's going on. But this one sounds like it's schlepping out. And the word often is like, and he delay, and you can feel the delay. So, for example, by Yosef, when it does it, he's like trying to leave Eshes Potiphar, and they put that note there. From the pasuk itself, it sounds like he's ready to get out of that place as fast as possible. The note's telling you it wasn't so easy. He struggled. That's why it's a tzaddik. He struggled and overcame, but he struggled. Do I stay? Do I go? Do I stay? Do I go? It's like, there's a struggle. Lot is leaving, right? And the angel says, we have to hightail it out of this place because the Baruch Hu is going to destroy it. It's going to be like nuclear explosion. And Lot's going, I can't go so fast. I have bank accounts and I got whatever. I'm tired. I got daughters still living here. I can't leave. The angel takes him out, right? Also, the fourth one by the Korban is actually no shot given, but I suspect it has to do with the fact that, as Moshe says, he was forewarned by Kodesh Baruch Hu that at some point in this process, someone important was going to die, which he thought was him and Aaron. So it's talking about the sacrifice that's going to trigger the whole thing. No one knows it but Moshe. So it might be that Moshe, even though he was fully involved and ready to do it, that inside, part of it was like, this is the end. This is my life or Aaron's life or both of our lives. So it's telling that the note's telling you what's going inside the heart of the person. So then why is it by Eliezer when he's looking for a wife for Yitzchak? Because he wanted his daughter to marry Yitzchak. And his loyalty was such that in spite of what he was feeling, he was going to carry through. But look what he does. He makes this impossible. You're not to be semech and nes. You're not to be semech and nes. You're supposed to do things in a tevadik way, and if Hashem does a miracle, he does it. You can't, set up in the first place. So he basically says, if Jupiter will align with Pluto and go, he's like the whole thing. Hashem says, I can do that. And he does it in the end. But he sets up a miracle in the process because he's hoping that maybe he won't be successful, and everything will turn around in his favor. Inside, not on the outside. We don't even know what we're thinking. We don't even know our motivation. In fact, one of the things about Shir HaGagulin is to understand how you come to understand what you're thinking. There are 5 levels of Ratzon. They correspond to the 5 levels of soul. You've got the top Hirhur, right? Then you have Ratzon, and then you have Machshava, and then you have Dibur, and then you have Maisa. Those are the 5 levels of Ratzon. What's an example? Someone's looking at the newspaper, and he notices that his neighbor was just honored because he gave $5,000 to the local shul. And they made a big dinner. And But he thought, that'd be nice to have that happen to me as well. But he's not thinking it consciously. It's like, it's in his head, but he's not even aware of it. But it's enough of an awareness to cause the next thing to happen. And he says to his wife, I think it'd be nice if we gave money to the shul. And his wife says, that's interesting. You never did that before. How much you want to give? I was thinking like 5,000. 5,000. Give $100 local, yeshiva. No, I just thought, we're getting older. It's time. He might even be sincere. That's the level of ratzon already. He's thinking what to do, but he hasn't worked it out yet. Actually, so first one was ratzon, then here. Sorry, switch those two around. Then machshava. What's machshava? You start to think about how you're going to do it. How you give the money, where you give the money to make it all come into play. Then there's dibur. You speak about it, you talk about it, bring it to the reality, and then you write the check. How do you find out what your original ratzon really was in the end? Well, you're sitting down in the office of the president of the shul, right? And he's making out his check for $5,000. His wife is like, she's wondering what's really going on over here. It doesn't sound like him, but maybe he's done tshuva. And the rabbi says, by the way, I just wanted to point out, you should know that we changed our policy here. All donations are now anonymous. And he breaks his pencil. His pen doesn't, he goes, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't, makes a mistake, tears it up, and strikes in another check for $1,000. And his wife and they walk out, and it says, what just happened there? He goes, I know, what do you ask? You were going to give $5,000, you give $1,000 in the end. No, I thought maybe we can afford it. No, it was when the rabbi said that it's anonymous. He's like, right. It comes up down the road. That was his original attempt. Even he wasn't aware of it. You have to understand the process, and you get to know yourself better, to make decisions better, to understand yourself better, and to operate as an individual in life better. But anyhow, Eliezer, what happens to Eliezer? So he goes, and he meets Rivka, and the miracle happens, and he's so enthralled with the whole situation, the Hashgacha Pratis, and he goes home, and he meets Lavan. Lavan comes out looking for jewels and riches and things like that, right? He finds them, and he says, Baruch haba, Hashem, blessed, you're the one who's come. In the name of God, you should be blessed. And we're all going, that's nice of him. I don't know how sincere he is, but that's nice of him. And then things just move on. Eliezer tells the whole story. Rivka comes home with him, earlier than planned, and everything just follows the cue, right? Turns out a remarkable thing happened, and that short little interchange we totally missed, because you could never know it without Shar HaGilgulim. It's impossible. You would never know it because there's no way to not make the connection. I bet you this happened. No, there's no way. You know what happened? Well, let's start from this direction instead. What was Yeshua's name? I said, what was Kaleb's name? Kaleb, one of the 10 spies? What was his name? Kaleb ben Yiboneh, right? That's his name? You all agree? No. You're a cheater. Kaleb ben Yiboneh, right? Is anybody called Yiboneh? No one's called, there's no Yiboneh in the entire Chumash, there's no Yiboneh in the entire Jewish people. His father was Chetzron. Kaleb ben Chetzron. So Gemara says, so why is he called Kaleb ben Yiboneh? So the Gemara answers, because he turned away, he was parneh from the Eitzah, from the decision, from the plan of the spy. He turned away. So that's drush. That's drush. And that's why he's called ben Yiboneh. How does his father feel about that? I don't know. But son's famous, anything else, what does he care? Right? But it says in Shar HaGilgulim, that's not why he's called Yiboneh. Because when Lavan says to Eliezer, Panisi es hamakom, I cleared out the place, I cleaned it for you and your animals to stay overnight, right? And Rashi explains, it means I cleared out the Avodah Zarah. All the idol-worshipping things I took away, so it's a kosher place for you to stay overnight. That was for Eliezer. That's why it's called Kaleb ben Yiboneh, because he says Panis, but I don't understand. Why? What's the connection? Makesh ben Zelazeh. So what? So he did that. So he said that. Big deal. What's the connection? The connection is that when Lavan said to him, blessed are you, he transformed him from a cursed Canaanite to a blessed descendant of Avraham. He transformed him. He took him out of the category of cursed. Now, with his daughter, it doesn't change his daughter's status. Had it happened before she was born, it would be a different story. But his status was changed. And because he was changed, guess who he comes back as? Kalev ben Yiboneh. Kalev is the reincarnation of Eliezer. Now what happens? The spies are going out to spy the land. 10 of them decide from the beginning. From the beginning. They decide from the beginning that they're going to speak badly about Eretz Yisrael. From the very beginning. 2 of them not. Which 2? Yeshua and Kalev. How is Yeshua protected against the tempting advice of the spies? Moshe gives them an extra yud. Where does the yud come from? From Sarah Imenu. Right? Sarah was changed to Sarah. The yud said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a little fair. I was attached to a tzaddik before. And now I'm just floating around in midair. What's going to happen? So Hashem said, don't worry. I got plans for you. Later on, Hoshea will become Yeshua, and you will protect him. The yud of Sarai will protect Yeshua from the Eitzah of the spies. But what happens to Kalev? Why not? What does he do for protection? He goes to Hebron. And what does he do in Hebron? Specifically who? Avraham. Why? Because that's his master. He prostrates himself on the grave of Avraham and says to his master, help me, spare me, save me from these evil people who wanted to speak disparagingly about Eretz Yisrael. And it works. And he gets what does he get? He gets Hebron? What does he get? He gets Shechem. No, not that. He also gets Shechem. He gets Hebron. He gets Hebron. Yeah, he gets Hebron in the end. Because that's his place. That's his place in the end. Yeah.
How did Hazan have the power to change the muzzle?
Because Lavan descended from the same family as Avraham. And that family was given the koich of bracha, even though he was a Rasha. Wow. Now, speaking of Lavan, this is my favorite of all. Yeah.
How is it possible that you go to the Avraham and speak to Avraham and ask him to say?
Why not?
Because then doesn't become intermediate.
We're allowed to do that. We go to the Kever Tzaddikim, especially in Rosh Chodesh, and ask them to act as intermediaries first before Kodesh Baruch Hu. As long as we don't empower them and believe that they're the source of our redemption, it's kosher.
He goes to the cave of Abraham.
Right.
And you see, he prostrates.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's mutter. It's okay. It's okay. Certainly before Har Sinai, that was okay. Actually, it's after Har Sinai. But it was already after his Har Sinai. But it was okay for him to do that. It was perfectly permissible. He was not turning to Avraham as a source of his redemption. He was turning to him as a Melis Yosher, to act on his behalf with the Kodesh Baruch Hu to get extra, his schools say to the Shema because he was such a loyal servant as Eliezer. That's what it says. That's what happens. It becomes Kalev ben Yiboneh. Remarkable. Like you see the story. The pieces are there, but you don't see how it all fits together. But this is one of the most mind-boggling ones of all, and that is, yeah.
Changing the name from Yeshua, is that where we get when someone is sick, we change their name? Is that where it comes from?
Not that I'm aware of. The Gemara just says Shini Mazel. It doesn't bring down as an example of it, but maybe it is connected. I don't know. Could be. Maybe. I don't know. Good question. But this is because it's so, on one hand, so obvious, it's so hidden, but it's so sublime. It's like just really, you have to appreciate it, right? Speaking of Lavan, right? Why is he called Lavan? He's called Shachor, really, right? The truth is his soul comes from a very high place. Lavan's soul, way up in the spheres. Just that unfortunately when it comes down here, it gets very corrupted. But aside from that, right? Lavan lives and then Lavan dies, as far as you know, right? He makes a pact. As Yaakov Avinu is fleeing for his life from Lavan to go back home, he meets up with him just before the border of Eretz Yisrael. And that point in time, they confront each other. And Hashem says to Lavan, don't touch him, don't do anything, not good, not bad, because you have no permission to do that. So Lavan obeys that. And they make a pact, and it's called Galed, or, it's called Galed or Galsadus in Aramaic. It means it's basically the pile of testimony that neither will cross this point in either direction to do harm to the other. And then Lavan disappears. We don't hear from Lavan from that point onward, as far as I recall. That's the end of Lavan, as far as we know. Yaakov is free of him, and now the story turns to Yaakov and the Shvatim, and going, what happens in Mitzrayim and Yosef. That's the story. Lavan's finished, as far as we know. We go into the future, and now we're talking about the Jewish people, towards the end of the 40 years in the Midbar. And Balak comes along and decides that he has to stop the Jewish people from entering the land, and he realizes that conventional warfare doesn't work. Because they beat Sichon, they beat Og, and miracles are happening for them. It's just not going to work. So he says, I've got to get somebody who understands that to fight Moshe Rabbeinu on his own level. So I'll get Bilam, whose koich is in his peh, in his mouth. Moshe's koich is in his tefillah, his mouth, right? And I'll get Bilam, whose koich is in his peh. He's a sorcerer, right? And Balak says, I know that those who you bless are blessed, and those who you curse are cursed. He's good. He's got a reputation. Right, and he gets hired for the job in the end. And in the end, he's failed, but only because Hashem does tricks with him, does shtick with him, makes him give the bracha where it's supposed to be a curse, and, the whole, it all plays itself out. And then, of course, Bilam gets killed because of the fact that he's in Midian at the time to take revenge against Midian because of the whole episode. He was collecting money because it was his advice to send the Benot Midian into the Jewish people and cause all the balagan that Pinchus came to, which we spoke about last week. Right, to stop and the whole thing, and he's gone at the age of 34. Bilam is killed. Right? Young guy. Baruch Hashem, he was killed. And he's gone, he's finished. And that's the end. Yes. And he's gone. No connection as far as you know. Now, when Bilam was on his way to curse the Jewish people, a very bizarre episode happens along the way. He's on his donkey, and his donkey sees an angel that he can't see. A lot of questions to ask over here. It's a big deal that the donkey can speak, but it's not a big deal that the donkey can see the angel. So the Aruch HaNemim unfortunately point out that animals can see these things. They can sense it. They can't necessarily see it, but they can at least sense it. They can sense, like the mazikim, they can sense. That's why that spook dogs will bark at nighttime, because they can see the Sitra Achra walking through the streets, whereas we can't be. Our eyes can't see it. The Gemara says if we could see all the shadim, we drop dead from shock in the end. They're all over us. They're all over the place, basically. And we're just being protected for them. Whatever. But the point is he can speak. He opens his mouth and he says to Bilam, what's going on over here? Why have you hit me 3 times? And Bilam says, because you crushed my leg against this wall 3 times. Okay. There's a reason why. And then he sees, and the story. It's Parshas Balak right there. There's this wall. What's this wall? What's this wall? Why a wall? It turns out that Bilam is the reincarnation of Lavan. And the wall? That's the monument they built. That was the point. Why did the angel stop him there? Because that was the point where Lavan and Yaakov made a shvua, an oath, not to pass that point to harm one another. And now Bilam's doing that, which teaches you a very important klal, by the way. It shows you that the idea of mitzvah gored mitzvah and a vera gored vera, that a sin can cause a sin and a mitzvah can cause a mitzvah, is not just in one lifetime. It can also span lifetimes, which may be difficult to understand, why things are happening to us because we can't remember, but things happen over the course of all our Gilgul in the end. Love and make the pact, Bilam's now paying for it as well. So Bilam, he gets punished, for what happens. What happens to Bilam? He dies at the hand of Pinchus. In the end, Pinchus kills him in Parshas Matos, right? And he's finished, he's over. Now this is a very interesting story to way down the road in history. And it concerns somebody. Actually, this is the husband of Abigail, who David later marries in the end. But her husband is Nabal HaKarmeli. Who's Nabal HaKarmeli? Nabal HaKarmeli is somebody who basically was not so polite to David the Melech. He cursed him, he called him all kinds of things, right? And then it says, the story just says, in Navi, in Tanakh, it says that his heart was like a rock. He was smote, like his heart was like a rock, and then like 10 days later he died from stroke. Because what? What happened to him? He just took sick. He cursed David and Melech. His heart became like a rock, and then he died. No explanation. No connection. Well, it turns out that Naval was the Gilgul of Bilam. Lavan became Bilam. It's really one soul. It's really Lavan's soul, right? Lavan became Bilam, and then Bilam became Naval, except that Bilam didn't go directly to Naval. He actually reincarnated first into a rock. You can do that. You can oh, you're getting ahead of me here, right? He came back as a rock. Why is a rock? Because Hashem works measure for measure. He always works measure for measure. What did Bilam do? He used his mouth abusively. He tried to curse. He did sorcery. He tried to curse the Jewish people. Measure for measure, he came back as a domain. A domain can't speak. That's the mineral world. It's called domain. So therefore, he came back as a rock, in a rock, not as a rock, but in a rock for a set period of time to fix his mouth. What happens? He does tikkun to some degree. He comes back as Naval Carmeli, and what happens in the end? He curses again. So the Rizal points out, it doesn't say like a rock, it says his heart was a rock. Because he knew, he sensed, he understood. He just undid his tikkun of being in the rock by cursing again. Lavan, Lamed, Beis, Nun. Lavan, Bilam, Naval. In his name. Right there in the Chumash, in his name. The name is telling you who he's going to be all from the beginning. Going back to Parshas B'chayesar, it's like right there, it's telling you he's going to be Bilam, he's going to be Naval. It's all in one soul, being rectified all from history, from all these events. In the end, there's a lot more. There's so many more. I mean, for example, some very unusual ones. I'm not going to go through them all right now, but there's a classic. I think I mentioned this the first night, right? The Terach came back as Eov, right? Eov is a classic story. Eov, Job, right? Terach, Abraham's father. Right now, from a pshat level, it's hard to understand why Eos make this suffer. If you read the story at a simple level, it doesn't make sense. To the point that people have come to the conclusion who've read the Sefer that God will indiscriminately punish somebody. And you just don't understand why. He's got to be just, but we can't understand the justice. It's beyond us. The Rizal explains how it's not. He shows why it's Minikadeged Mida even without Gilgulim. But this comes along and says, no, but this is Terach's tikkun. Eov was just an excuse for it in the end. Oh, fix that's all worked out. The questions of Tzaddik Ravo don't even take off the ground. You're off the ground again, right? Another one. Oh, important, but we can't go through the whole thing right now. If you look in Parsha Shlachacha, right, it mentions the spies were out to spy the land. They came back with an evil report. Now, the Torah tells us, the Torah tells us, they went out twice. It mentions they went out and they came back. But it already mentioned they went out. Rashi points out, the Gemara points out, it mentions that they left twice. They left twice. They came back once. But it says they left twice. They only left once, but it says they left twice. So Rashi sees this and points out what the Gemara says. It's telling us that it's making a connection between their going and their coming. The first one means they left, but the second one means that just like they came back with bad advice, bad intentions, they also left with them as well. That's what Rashi at Pshat level. The Rizal says, no, that's true. That's true on a Pshat level, but on a deeper level, this is what it means. It means, thank you very much, it means that the first Biyatza is not talking about the Meraglim. The second one is talking about them. Who's the first one talking about? It's talking about the 10 sons of Yaakov who come back as Iburi. They come back as souls to go into the bodies of the spies as they go out to help them succeed at spying the land. The first going out is talking not about the spies going out. It's talking about the Iburim, the sons of Yaakov, who are going out into these bodies to go with them on their journey to Eretz Israel so they can succeed at spying the land without talking badly. But they fail. It doesn't work in the end. And they lose it as a result of that. They lose the Ibur. They leave them. Once they come back with bad advice, the Iburim, because they won't stick around if they'd be part of that bad thing. Yeah.
And also it had something to do with the some kind of rectification for being
Also,
cruel to Yosef.
but that's mostly to do with the 10 martyrs.
Yeah, I was about to ask you a question about the 10 martyrs. How come Yiboneh come back?
Because that's the fix for Yosef.
Like Rabbi Akiva, the 10 martyrs, they got like Yiboneh from the 10.
Right, and that's why they come back. And that has to do. It's also to do with Yosef, with Ashes Potiphar, which it's a little bit of a deeper discussion right now, based upon what the Gemara says what happened with Yosef. But that's why the Caesar has this whole thing where he fills the room with shoes and connects it to the sale of Yosef. This Roman. When was the last time a Roman needed an excuse to kill Jews? Back in those days, and he goes ahead and fills the room filled with shoes and says, "What's the law if you sell a brother into slavery? What do you care?" And they have to answer to this, right? But they know, which is why Rabbi Akiva, they go up to Shemaim, Ishmael, and they ask God what to do, and that's a shir into itself. I don't want to, just run through that one. That's a very important shir, closer to Yom Kippur, perhaps at that time as Hashem. But the interesting thing, and this is where I don't know, share the excitement, but it's like such a beautiful thing, because what happens is that Yosef's brothers come down to Egypt, and Yosef does something very inexplicable. What does he do? Meraglim atem. Your spies. Justifies the whole thing, right? He's instigating. He's antagonistic because he's trying to bring out the tshuva. So we can accept that. But he's giving them a hint. I saw in a sefer once, the word meraglim stands for Me'imi Rachel Genavtem L'Midyadim Ishmaelim Machartem. He's talking to them in code. He's indicating to them, he wants them to recognize, if they had said Ata Yosef, and he didn't say Ani Yosef, that was the Gula Shlema, right there. That's what he was trying to bring about. If they could get to the recognition and say Ata, you gotta be Yosef. That's also a shir unto itself. But that's what he's saying to them. He's telling the brothers, if you don't fix up what went wrong with you and me, now, when you go into the souls of the Jewish people hundreds of years from now, we're going to fail and be stuck in exile for thousands of years. If you don't fix up, what happened? What happened? What happened? What went wrong? Well, they looked at him and they saw nothing valuable. Just a comment. They saw this guy, he's no good. He's got to go. There's no way God likes this person. There's no way God's going to build geula for this person. It's not going to happen. That was their perception. That's what they saw. That's the way they saw it. They sell him. And they don't tell Yaakov. They cause him such surus because they believe in themselves. They're so sure of themselves. The Medrash says they make God take an oath that he's not going to tell Yaakov what they did because he's not going to deal with it properly. I haven't had Yishmael. They're going to give him Yishmael, and then Yaakov want to give the brachos to Esav. And he's like, yeah, Yosef. He's like, bad guy, bad news. And then I was like, I need Yosef. And his dreams, whoa, speechless. Man, that's the time to start talking. There. We're so sorry. We were looking for you. It was a mistake. Forgive us. Like, no, can't talk. You know why we can't talk? When can't you talk? When you're so in shock, there's just no words. When you're so wrong. You're not just wrong. You didn't just make a mistake. You're so wrong. You're just so incredibly, there's no words. And Yosef says to his brothers, if you don't get rid of that, when it comes time to spy the land of Eretz Israel, it's going to happen all over again. They're going to look, and they say, there's no way this is where we have to be. This is not the place that God wants us to be. It's not the place that we can do Torah and mitzvahs. It's not the place in Eretz Israel. It's not, and you're going to make a mistake, and the spies come back. It's like a suicide mission. God's right there. They saw what happens to people when they go against God. God, bring down the lightning. We don't want to go. You're saying, it's only after Moshe, God says, forget it. We apologize. We're so sorry. We made a mistake. What were you thinking in the first place? They were doing it, l'shem shamayim. They were doing it for the right. They thought God was going to be musky with them. And then they were shocked to find out how wrong they were. And that's what Yosef, Meraglim B'Tem. Yosef, he's alluding to them right there. And here's the last one. It's our last session, so I can go 5 minutes a little bit later. Just finish this last one because it's so important for today. one of the things, for me, as the rabbi pointed out, that Gul is a big topic by me. End of days is a big topic by me, and it's not by choice. I did not like the idea of getting involved in this whatsoever. I was driving this way, and I got hit and sent back this way in the end. It was thrown in front of me, and I was forced to look at it. I didn't want to get involved. Believe me, just saying the word Mashiach used to make the hair stand up in the back of my neck. It was so uncomfortable, because the messianic stuff is like, Messiah is not for me. I'll talk about the part, but not that stuff. God's going, look over here, look over here. It's like, I couldn't help it. And it got to the point which it became so obvious, he just can't help it. And then I got to chapter 20 and sure had Gilgulim. And it was like, whew. It's like lighting a plane at nighttime. You can't see the runway. And all of a sudden the lights going, whew, just like they all light up, and the whole runway, like clear, the whole way you can see. It's all clear. This insight is like that. What is it? The Arizal says, he says, not only does Moshe Rabbeinu come back in every single generation, not only does he come back and he's going to be Mashiach in the end, his soul in the body of someone from David, right? But not only will he come back, he says, but guess who else comes back? Dor HaMidbar. The generation of Jews that left Egypt with him, they come back too. And not just them, guess who else comes back for curtain call? The Erev Rav, the mixed multitude. It's like scene one all over again. See, you say to yourself, why would God do that? It's like there's a shortage of souls or something. They put these new bright orange containers in our street for recycling containers, metal things and cartons and all that. I wanted to put souls at the bottom, Gilgulim, put them also in there. Because we're recycling souls. What, we don't have enough of them? God said, I miscounted. I thought we did. History ran too long, and now bring back the ones from the beginning. We only bring back souls for tikkun. That's the only reason why. They're fixing it. We don't bring up for tikkun. It's all that. It's nothing else, right? Tikkun is what it's at. Especially for a whole generation. It's tikkun. Tikkun. What's the tikkun? You open the Chumash. You say, wow, the Egel Zav, the golden calf. Believe me, we got to fix up for that one too. The World Trade Center was tied to that. But that's a discussion to itself, right? Y2K is tied to that, right? That was part of that tikkun process. But that wasn't it. You know why? Because we fixed up for that. 3,000 people got killed because, Milashem Alai, Moshe took care of everybody. The people that were left over were not the ones involved. Rashi does bring down and say, there's not one punishment in the history of the Jewish people that does not carry some aspect of the golden calf punishment as well. So we're paying off an installment to some degree. But it's not the chet. Hashem was prepared to let us go to Eretz Yisrael at that point in time and begin the Beis Hamikdash and the whole thing. And Moshe Rabbeinu himself could have been, the Goyal, all of it. Even though it was predicted he wouldn't be, but he could have been. Possible. So which chet is the one that requires tikkun? It was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was when the Kodesh Baruch Hu said, that's it. Galus. We're not going in. We're not getting all the 10 nations or the 7 nations. That's the one. That's the one that Hashem said has to be fixed up. And what was their chet? The Medrash says, all that happened to Yosef is going to happen to Tzion. It doesn't say about anybody else. The Gematria of Yosef and Tzion are the same, 156. In Kol HaTorah, there are 156 aspects of Mashiach ben Yosef that have to be carried out, he brings down in the Sefer. It's all tied to Yosef. But what was the number one thing that happened to Yosef? His brothers. His brothers were from. Seriously from. Stark, as we would say today. The whole thing. They looked at Yosef, who was the future Goyal of the Jewish people, the Redeemer of the Jewish people, and they rejected him. Because they said, there's no way God's going to build his redemption from this. No way. And the Medrash says, hang around. You're going to see this thing repeat itself. It's Sion. So who is Sion? Sion is the name that the Nevi'im use for the Jewish people. Eretz Yisrael, Gul, it's all one thing. Right? They don't say it's happened to Eretz Yisrael. It happened to Tzidon, the Geula. It's really another name for the Geula in the end, Tzidon. And what does David Melech write? He writes, he says, Atat hakum terchem Tzidon. Ki eis lechanin ki vamoed. Right? You're going to get Kosh Baruch Hu. You're going to get it. You're going to have mercy on the Jewish people. Because the appointed time, the Geula, the Moed is going to come. And the Gra says we hasten it by approaching it, it approaches us. Reminds me of those things in the printer. You know, you push one side, pushes the other side, close together. We go, this is what happened, right? How does he finish off the verse? You know how I would have finished off the verse? Why is God going to have mercy on us? Because everybody's learning Torah, and it's available on the internet, and you can learn it on your phones, and you can learn in the yeshivas, and there's Sfarim, it's like an explosion of Torah learning. That's how I would have finished it. Because that's what's going to happen. Not what David Melech wrote. Not what he wrote. He wrote. What did he write? I forgot the second place. Ki ratzu avdechas of Neha, Vesafra Yechanenu. Ki ratzu avdechas of Neha, because your servants cherish her stones, and they want her dust. The Gemara at the end of Kesuvos talks about Tanoim. Rav Zera, for example. Rav Zera is coming to Eretz Yisrael. The ferry to go across the Jordan River is not there right now, but there's a rope, so that somehow it can shimmy across on a rope. And there's a certain Tzaduki, mean, Sadducee, whatever he is, sees him do this and says, you guys are so impatient. You said Nasif and Nishma, you didn't ask God what it says for you. We'll take it, How much does it cost? It's free. We'll take 2. Right? So it's like, they didn't even ask questions first. And they just took it. And it was like, and here, the boat's not here. You didn't wait. He answers back. The land that Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron and Cohen were not able to get in and cross, who knows? If this delay is because I'm not waiting to find out. If I can get there, I'm going. And they rolled in the dust, and when they learned Torah outside, they sat in the shade or the sun, whatever is Noach for them, just to fulfill the verse of loving the dust. And what do? Not you guys. You're here. What's holding up the Geula? So I once had a discussion. I used to travel and talk about these things even before I knew this particular point. But I used to travel and talk about this, and I didn't always get such a warm reception. I went about this idea of redemption. My Rebbe said this, and I did know this from the Shraga Gulim, and I said to him, this is what it says. How do you know that the reason why you don't want to go is because you're one of them, and you're missing your second chance to do tikkun? How do you know? How do you know that sense of rejection, I don't have that, but that sense of rejection that you have for the land, you feel there's no need to go, that's not important to you. After Hashem has given it to us, back in 1940, I can understand. Dreading swamps, not my thing. Malaria, definitely not my thing. And even when I first came here, back in the 80s, it was like, man, it's like dark ages. They were still writing down their things in the kolet, on a cue card. It's like, you hold this now. It's like military was advanced, but everyday life is not yet. And then you have yeah. And for me, in those days, a terrifying experience was having to fight my phone bill. To go into the phone company. You had to pack a knapsack with a sleeping bag and, lunch and breakfast. It's like, maybe it was like, but it's, look around. So unfortunately, I didn't get to one of the most important points, but it is in that book, I think. And if it's not there, it's on my site. It's one of the books somewhere, but this is the main point. This is the most important point of Sharhad Gilgulim is telling us. This is the end of history. In the Vilna Gaon's time, he called it the final generation, Dor Basra. And that was already the 1700s, 1800s. Where are we now? We're at the end. All this is predictable. What's going on today, what's gone on with the World Trade Center, when history changed in 2001, it's been going down to the entire time, and the Arab world has been rising, and the Jewish world has been going down in terms of political power in the States, and you have a president who's not favorable to Israel, and he's part of the funnel thing. So this is it. We're holding at the end. Literally, at the end. It's so close it could happen tomorrow. I'm surprised it didn't happen yesterday. at this point in time. But that's the test. And that's why, from this perspective, you look at the news. Israel is like one tiny little country. One tiny country. Massive world. Europe is massive. But everybody is talking about us. The whole world is focused on us. And worst of all is that a split in the Jewish people today is over us. Not over learning. Not over Torah. Not over mitzvahs. We got used to that. They got used to that. We're not fighting about that anymore. What are we fighting about? Eretz Yisrael. Every square inch of it. What belongs, what doesn't belong to us, how you feel about it, we don't feel about it. So the Gra says the Erev Rav, the whole thing about the Erev Rav is just to join Yishmael and Asa together against the Jewish people.
Wow.
That's what it says. He's writing in the 1700s, 18th century. He said the Erev Rav at the end of the days, the whole battle's going to be, they're going to work to do one thing, and they're going to make it look, he says, they're going to make it look like they're helping you, but they're not really helping. How did you know? How did you know? Because the end of history is the beginning of history. We didn't finish Galus Mitzrayim. We're in the middle of it. And that's why it's called Kates Hayamim. Because Kates Hayamim, the Gematria Kates was 190. Hayamim means the days. It should say Kates Yamim, the end of days. Not Kates Hayamim, the end of those days. Which days? The ones we didn't finish off in Mitzrayim. The ones we left early. We're supposed to be there for 4 years. We left after 210. So that's why, at the beginning of history, we're in Mitzrayim for 210 years, followed by 40 years in the desert. There's going to be 40 years of Kibbutz Galios at the end of history, followed by 210 years of Chesed Mesim. 210, 40, 40, 210. Bookends at the end of history. And the Gra says, the Gra who says it? The Gra says it. But the point, the Rizal says it. The Rizal says that the whole point of going down to Mitzrayim, these Parshiyot, the whole point of going into Mitzrayim was not to go to Mem Teshari Tuma, the 49th level of impurity. It was to bring the world up to the Nun Shai Kedusha. We're supposed to go down to Mitzrayim and elevate them to the levels of Kedusha. We went the direction instead. So really, Mitzrayim was supposed to be like the Chesed Mesim, resurrection of the dead. So what do you have in the end? You have 210 years in Mitzrayim, 40 years of wandering in the desert, has to be fixed up. 40 years of Kibbutz Galios, corresponding to 40 years of wandering, followed by 210 of the Chesed Mesim, resurrection of the dead, but each was supposed to have been. The completion. You work backwards from 6,000. 6,000 less 210, plus 40 is 250. As of 1990, we would have begun the period, according to the Zohar, of Kibbutz Galios, which works beautifully with what's happening in history. The majority of the Jewish population today lives in Eretz Yisrael. The world population today of Jews is 15 million, but that includes Reform Jews, all kinds of aberrations that we don't halachically don't call Jewish necessarily. But the ones living here, that we know. We were careful about that. The majority of Jews living in Eretz Yisrael at this stage of history, the third time we came back, there's no time we're supposed to go again. This is the end of it. With 210 years plus 40, Kibbutz Galus, which means, according to this calculation, 9 to 10 years from now, it's supposed to begin the resurrection of the dead. No wonder history is going the way it's going right now. So when people look and they say, well, maybe this will come and it'll go. It'll pass. It's just another period of history. We have ups and downs. How do you know? Listen to a shir last week. Somebody else was speaking, and he was talking about the same thing. He said, someone said to him, well, in the Holocaust, he said the same thing as well. He said, yeah, but there's a big difference. This is what he said. And he says, what the Gedolim were saying. He didn't have the chutzpah the Gemara is talking about. You had the Holocaust, but not the chutzpah. People still respected their parents. People still respected their elders. He didn't have. Today, he said the chutzpah is unbelievable. Not just in the secular, but the religious world. It's all over the place. Everybody's got it. That's when the simani. And it tells you inside. That's the final act. We are that final act. We are it. We are living through it. There's not much time left. According to all the sources, you put the picture together, there's not much time left. It's tikkun. It's all about tikkun. And tikkun's about taking your life seriously and using the time seriously and understanding you can't afford to drift. We're not drifters. We have to make the best use of the time because we don't have much left. Once Mashiach comes, free will is over. No more bechira. No more earning schar in the world to come. Forever. Forever. I mean, 1,000 years ago, they still, we're the final generation. It's the final generation. It's hard to believe. It's hard to accept. Doesn't make it not true. Yeah.
Question: where does the Erev Rav fit into the process of the ultimate redemption, and how do we identify it?
The main, we're not going to identify all of them first of all, but the main thing about the Erev Rav is they go to war against the Jewish people. They don't not just secular, not just people who say I don't want to be religious. They're people who go to war against the Jewish people and specifically against the national goals of the Jewish people. They go to war against that. They literally take it up as a cause and fight against it. Not that they don't want to be a part of it. That's one of the main identifying factors.
So what you're saying is anything that's an obstacle to the destiny of the Jewish nation?
If they take it up as a personal cause, they could do tshuva. But if they don't, and while they're part of it, they will constitute being part of the Erev Rav.
Would you say the Supreme Court in Israel today is part of the Erev Rav?
Most of the rabbis are in Rav, according to Slotner.
That's a little bit different. Yeah, they were a little bit too further down the road in that shita. But it could definitely be. I turned the recorder off to tell you what I think. Call me tomorrow.
You had a situation where there could have been a resolution on a situation where Jews were thrown off land, which was questionably owned by either Arabs or Jews. Right? And yet the Supreme Court made a decision which was more receptive to a world vision rather than a Jewish destiny vision.
You're right, but it comes down to where the person's coming from. There's confusion, and you can talk to lots of secular people who don't have any Torah background, and they're very confused, and they really buy into their values, and they believe that religion is the opium of the masses, they believe it causes all the wars, and they're confused, and they can do tshuva. Versus somebody who's something, it really irks them inside. It's like it's not a rational thing. It's a really internalized hatred and self-hate to a large degree that pushes them to go above and beyond the call of duty to interfere with Jewish destiny.
Well, when you're paid by outside sources which are hostile to the nation, would you consider that something that would be akin to, and these are Jews that are accepting money from outside sources. 90% of their money comes from the EU and other places.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the people that brought
Yeah.
the
So on the same subject, we're told, since I said this week, we used to say it all the time, that the unity, in order to bring Mashiach, we have to have unity. But then we also hear, as Rav just said, about the Erev Rav, which is mamash enmity toward the destiny of Am Yisrael. So here we are in Eretz Yisrael. So it's one thing to call people, George Soros, Erev Rav, and it certainly is. But here we are in Eretz Yisrael with other Jews who are living in Eretz Yisrael, and the tendency to point to the people who are on the left and say Erev Rav is in complete counterpoint to the idea of no, you have to love every Jew, and you have to have opposites in Am Yisrael in order to bring Mashiach. So since there's no way to for sure identify the Erev Rav, even on the Supreme Court, there's Neil.
It's hard, but I'll just tell you what I've seen. Al Pi Sod, the Leshem says it specifically. He says unity is not something that could be cheaper for Mashiach. It's just not. It's not in the works. You can see it's not there. Sorry.
Who says that?
Rav Shlomo Eliashov. It's called the Leshem for short. Okay. He says because Kabbalistically, it's just not the light that's necessary to bring it about is not going to be in the world that Mashiach is here and done his thing. So even in the religious world, it's just built in to have argument and fighting and to take it to personally, and people actually start to hate one another. It's just the world just does not have the keys at this stage of the game to work on unity. Fantastic, it's a big bracha, it's a big mitzvah to do things like that. Don't give up on it, but don't be don't base everything upon it because it's not achievable without Mashiach. That's one of the things Mashiach will have to do. What is achievable? Developing a love of Geula, the national goals of the Jewish people, and first and foremost, Eretz Yisrael. Because you just read the Midrashim. Eretz Yisrael, it got for obvious reasons, because I didn't want to go into it right now, but there's this concept called Mirma Tachbolis. I think I may have mentioned in one of the first sessions like that. But it's a very important concept. And the idea has to do with whether Mashiach can come earlier or late. And when Mashiach cannot come based upon the merits of the Jewish people, then Hashem will do it in a backwards way that makes it look like just the opposite's happening.
Like Logan's daughters.
Yeah, that's a major part of it. That is in the book, right? A major part of it. There's one chapter in the book called Factors of Redemption. There, I think, and it goes to the history. It shows you how this concept of Mirma Tachbolis plays in all of history. The foundation of the state of Israel fits the mold perfectly. Founded by secular people who wanted a secular country, nothing to do with religion. Of course, it doesn't look like there's nothing that can happen Gula-oriented with a country like that. Then take a look around today. We're sitting in a shul right now talking Torah. The country's beautiful. It's built up. There's housing. It's like the classic joke is that the religious people had to do it. Would have been inside out by now. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't have worked. It'd take miracles to do it, right? But the point is, whatever Hashem's, but the trouble is, Hashem is so busy fooling the Sitra Achra into thinking that Gula is not taking place, that we buy it too. We buy it too. And then we go along with it. And Hashem's going, that's not for you. It's like, it's like winking at somebody, and the guy, it's like, we're all going to go, eat tonight, and you're winking, we're not really going to go tonight, and he's like, he doesn't see the winking. He's like ignoring it. That's Jewish history, yeah.
With all due respect to the Satmar Rebbe, the Rav Kook made an allusion to Theodore Herzl that he was the Mashiach ben Yosef.
Yeah.
But in every generation you have Mashiach.
Every generation. And in Kol HaTorah brings down there's three aspects of Mashiach ben Yosef. First of all, there is the Malach in Shemayim, of Mashiach ben Yosef, who fights the Malach of the Erev Rav in Shemayim. Then you have the people who function on behalf of Mashiach ben Yosef, performing three different functions. Number one, getting involved in kibbutz galuyos, aliyah, nefesh b'nefesh, things like that. Then you have even the Jewish agency, as long as it was it's an aspect of Mashiach ben Yosef, without question, right? Building up Eretz Yisrael, building up the Yishuv, is a function of Mashiach ben Yosef. Building this country is part of that prospect, that whole process, right? The third one is being Megalus Sub Ba'olam, revealing secrets, revealing Kabbalah to in the world, because we need it to survive history and to get to the next stage of history. These are three aspects, he says, when people participate, that they have a spark at Mashiach ben Yosef in them. And the final stage is a person who will be Mashiach ben Yosef, perhaps, maybe yes, maybe no, and there's one in every generation, potentially, and a Mashiach ben David. Both come back in every generation, potentially. So, one thing, that's the thing, if you want to sum up Shar HaGilgulim, this whole discussion, in a nutshell, one thing you learn is that before you pass judgment on a simplistic level with people and history and Gula and Eretz, all these things, take a step back and think about it and do some research and work it through, because it's far more complicated than you think it is. And if you take it simplistically, you're going to make a mistake and lose the opportunity, and you'll be forced. You know what's going to happen? Just like the brothers, when Yosef said, Ani Yosef, and they went, and they couldn't speak, Eretz Yisrael, Geula, is going to stand up at the end of history and say, Ani Geula. And the Jewish people are going to go, and be speechless, because we had no idea. Well, you could have if you took the time to learn about it. Yeah.
So what did this person say? It's a burning question, because we are so close. As you said, what did this person say about
40.
This whole question of 4/5? Will only 1/5 of all this will be redeemed, or will they all be redeemed? It's a burning question.
Well, the Gemara answers this. The Gemara says specifically. Gemara says it can be very similar. It's like what happened to Mitzrayim is going to happen at the end of days as well. Gemara says.
Does your Rizal say anything about it, or the Lesha say anything about it?
No, the Medrash says. Many from Mepharshim, Rav Cheskel Levenstein brings down in his Sefer Musa Gula that you're only going to make it if you really want it at the end of history.
Sefer Yeshayahu, I think it's Perek Vav. It says Oda Siriyahu. One of the Mepharshim says there are two perushim. One is that there are 10 kings from Shlomo till Samei, and says, I don't remember what it is, that there will always be 10% of Am Yisrael which will keep the Torah.
Mm.
In other words, it's a very set.
Right, but does that mean that's all be saved? Does it mean that?
They did. I don't remember if they said they will be saved.
Because when Ezra came back after Galus Bavel, the turning point was who wanted to go back. The people who left Mitzrayim were the people who wanted to leave. They didn't give up on Gula. Okay, these are things that are hard to interpret to know for sure, but it's a warning. It's a warning from the Gemara. The Gemara says it's just like few people say, negative prophecies don't have to come true. That's the clue. Unfortunately, they tend to, because we don't take them seriously. It's my hope, it should be our blessing, that after thousands of years of not getting it right, at least the last time, that we should.
How do you think Trump fits in?
I'm still waiting, but if I had to, from what I see right now, he's going to cause World War III. He's going to cause World War III. He's going to cause the whole thing to come on. One way or another way, and not because he's a bad guy, not judging on him, but what he seems to want to, look, the whole world is like pulling apart at the seams. It's not going to get fixed up. It's not him. He's not doing it. It's not him who's doing it. It was there. That's a very important point people are missing. It was all there already. Hashem, through him, is being begotten. The same way, for example, that World War I, forced Hitler into power and to do what he did, that eventually he did what he did in the end. So Hashem he's tired. It's not tired physically, but it's time for Geula, and we're just hanging out. We're just hanging out. In 1990, when I used to be teaching, in a school, so I used to give a shiur, and if you could go back to before the Twin Towers, right? It was a very peaceful, quiet, Masudar world. I mean, there was no impending chaos. There was no need to have to make Aliyah. You wanted, you did it. But it wasn't. In America was a great place. England was okay. Europe was not yet what it was at this point in time. The Arabs weren't all over the place yet at this point.
You had the Intifada in Israel, which was pretty tough.
Yeah, in Israel, but not in the world. Not in the world. The rest of the world was still pretty quiet. It was the beginning of everything. Okay, that was already, the signs it was coming, and it happened exactly after 40 years of the state being formed, because that's when the Sitra woke up and realized this was Gula. He realized 40 years always represents gestation. 400 years, 40 years is always like a period of completion. But that's the way the world was. And in 1999, 1998, in advance of Y2K, I used to teach. I said, these were people going back to college. They're going back to college. And I said, you won't be there for very long. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, because something's going to happen very soon. Major. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. Right? But something's going to happen in a major way that's going to change the way we feel about living in the diaspora. And they say, how could you make a statement like that? I said, because here it says that, this is where we have to end up. And here it says we have to end up there kind of by this time, right? And here's where we're holding right now, right? And it seems that they're so far apart. And the only way to get that to change is something major has to happen to change the world, because the Jews won't do it on their own.
But how do you explain in the diaspora, Jewish communities are thriving, they're actually growing, they're building, and the concept of Israel, the Torah, and the people they still don't get it.
Right. And that's exactly what happened in pre-war Germany. Exactly. We were just getting into the game at that point in time. In fact, a not so well-known fact, and I really have to stop at this point, but a not so known, this is a mind-blowing thing. In 1933, the Jewish Agency, together with the Nazi Party, agreed to ship German Jews to Palestine. 60,000 left, and they had this weird way to get their property, and they actually got their property back somehow in the end. Hitler, Yamach Shema B'Zichro, did not want to do it, but he went along with it anyhow, until 1939. It would have been 160,000 Jews, but 100,000 German Jews said, we're just as German as the next German, we don't need to leave. Every single one, I think without fail, died in the camps. The 60,000 that left, are both part of the founders of this country over the last 40, 50, 60 years.
I know that the ones who founded Nahariya, so all those German Jews, I know that person. They left in 1936.
Yeah, that's when they came. And there was a Nazi party that helped foot the bill and get them out, because the first idea was Judenrein, just to get the Jews out. Before and they 160,000 Jews could have left. How mind-boggling that is? But they didn't go, because they were just getting accepted. It was like they were building themselves into the culture, right? It's a trap. It's a trap. It always is a trap. Yeah. I'm sorry. Quick? Okay, yeah.
So Trump obviously is maybe trigger something. Unprecedented in American history. The prior president, instead of going back to his ranch or his peanut farm, is moving back to Washington to stay involved.
Yeah.
And helping, trying to really cut the country into two different.
He never planned to leave. He never planned to leave in the first place. He was dropping. You know how Obama worked the entire time? If you paid attention to Obama, you could see he always floated ideas first. He was telling you what his plans were, but he didn't come out to say it directly. He would just say something and drop it. So he said a few times, I've been told if I ran a third time, I would be elected president. He was clearly saying, I have no intention of leaving, and certainly had Clinton got in, she was going to be the puppet government. Soros, wherever, these guys were going to run it from behind. She was the way for Bill Clinton and Obama and these guys to stay in power through her. That was the plan. Hashgacha pratis. Trump got it instead. Everything got shockingly changed for them, and now they've been working backwards behind the scenes. They haven't given up. If anyone thinks for 1 second that these guys who worked for decades to get to the point where they could make such liberal changes to the government policy and the Supreme Court are simply going to walk away because one president goes in who decides he's going to change everything, back to the way it was, or do things more conservatively. No way. The battle has just begun.
Do you think that Ivanka, who is Yael, could be a little bit like Esther and share at her husband's little like?
People suggested things like that. It is a bizarre thing. And there's a concept, Mesa Shem Haisazos. Yeah, that's a bizarre thing. But overall, usually, Jews in high positions of power does not usually work out favorably for the Jewish people. Usually. Esther was an exception to the rule by Barbanel for a while, but if it does, great. But
they should make Aliyah, right?
For sure.
I mean,
absolutely. And then Trump will have no choice but to expand the settlements.